Hey, what's going on everybody? Commander Crane here, and we are back with another standard deck tech, and today we're going to be talking about budget Rakdos Outlaws. I'm very excited to bring this list to you. It's been a minute since we've done a standard deck here on the channel. As always, let me know in the comment section below, what do you think about the list? Is there a card that I forgot to include? Or do you have suggestions for upcoming videos? Just let me know in the comment section below. And speaking of suggestions, huge shout out to Lagfest, longtime subscriber of the channel, has recommended a ton of different decks here on the channel. And this one is definitely very, very spicy. So huge shout out to Lagfest. So let's go and hop into here. Okay, so for those who don't know, Outlaws is kind of a new, it's not even a creature type, it's more of just a mechanic. It's kind of similar to Party. So Outlaw, essentially, like it says on in the quotes on Vial Smasher, it says, assassins, mercenaries, pirates, rogues, and warlocks are outlaws. And there's a ton of new cards in Outlaws of Thunder Junction that have to do with outlaws. So for instance, Vial Smasher, whenever another outlaw enters the battlefield under your control, Vial Smasher deals 1 damage to target opponent. And there's a whole bunch of cards that have to do with having other outlaws and giving those creature types benefits. And I would say that these 3 cards here are probably the biggest like synergy cards in the entire deck. So we're playing 4 Vial Smasher, Gleeful Grenadier. I think this card's really, really good for this kind of deck. You know, 3/2 for 2, obviously pings a dude basically whenever we play a creature. That's just really, really good. We're also playing 4 Hellspur Posse Boss, 2 4 for 4. Other outlaws you control have haste, which is extremely good. And then when it enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1 red mercenary creature tokens with tap. Target creature you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Activate only as a sorcery. That's kind of like a big mechanic in this set, is making 1/1 mercenary creature tokens. And again, works with Vial Smasher. So we play the Hellspur Posse Boss. Boom, it's a rogue. We deal 1 damage. The tokens enter. Boom, we do 2 more damage with Vial Smasher. Again, I think Vial Smasher is secretly the best card in the entire deck, but we're also playing 3 Hellspur Brute. It has affinity for outlaws, which means it costs 1 less to cast for each outlaw essentially that we have. So guess what? If we have 4 outlaws in play, this is a 1 mana 5/4 trampler. So I'm definitely really like the Hellspur Brute. So this is like some of the new cards that came out in the new set. Let's go ahead and check out the rest of the other outlaws that we're playing. We're playing 4 copies of Forsaken Miner. This card is really good in this deck, and also just in standard. It's a 2/2 for 1. Sure, it can't block, but whenever you commit a crime, you may pay a black. If you do, return it from your graveyard to the battlefield. And guess what? We have a ton of different ways that we can commit crimes, especially, for instance, with the Vial Smasher itself. We play another outlaw, boom, this triggers, we pay a black, bring it back, and hey, guess what? We get to deal another damage just because we're a rogue deck, or not a rogue deck, an outlaw deck, sorry. So, huge fan of Forsaken Miner in the deck. We're also playing 4 copies of Reckless Lackey. It is a pirate, so it does count as an outlaw. 1/2 for 1 first strike haste, 2 in a red, sacrifice it, draw a card, and create a treasure token. That's just an extremely good rate, so definitely a huge fan of Reckless Lackey. Then we're also playing 4 copies of Charming Scoundrel. It's a rogue, which counts as an outlaw. The card's obviously really good, sees a ton of play in mono red currently in the format, and we also get to play in our aggro deck as well. So let's go and check out some more of the outlaws we have here. This is pretty much the last slide for Outlaw Synergy. We're playing 2 Zayoa. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Zayoa Lava Tongue. That's just so hard for me to say. 2/2 for 2 with Death Touch. It's a warlock, so that's why it's an outlaw. At the beginning of your end step, if you descend to this turn, each opponent may discard a card or sacrifice a permanent. Deals 3 damage to each opponent who didn't. So it's just good because it's, again, it's in our synergies. If any of our creatures die, obviously we trigger the Zayoa, which is pretty good. So huge fan of that card in general. It's also a legendary creature, which is relevant for the last card here, which we'll talk about that in a moment. We're also playing 3 copies of Laughing Jasper Flint. I haven't personally played this card yet. This is the first time I'm actually playing this card, but I've heard from a lot of people that this card is really good. It's a 4/3 for 3, which is already awesome. It's a rogue, which counts as an outlaw. It's also lizard for just cool bonus typing. Creatures you control but don't own are mercenaries in addition to their other types. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top X cards of target opponent's library, where X is the number of outlaws you control. Until end of turn, you may cast spells from among those cards, and mana of any type can be spent to cast those spells. So, huge benefit to playing all of our outlaws. And again, our entire deck is all outlaws. We get to play cards from our opponent's library. Like, that's just awesome. I mean, that alone is extremely strong. So definitely a huge fan of Laughing Jasper Flint. The card is sweet. Then we're also playing 3 copies of Tiny Bones Joins Up. It is really, really good in this deck for a number of reasons. Obviously, it helps trigger the committing a crime, because when it enters any number of target players, each discard a card. And then whenever a legendary creature enters the battlefield under your control, any number of target players each mill a card and lose 1 life. Spoiler alert, we're playing a ton of legendary creatures in this deck. So it's going to be very, very easy for us to trigger the Tiny Bones Joins Up. So huge fan of the card. It's probably one of my favorite cards in the entire deck. I think Tiny Bones Joins Up is definitely very, very underrated. So the last side we have to talk about real quick is a couple of our just, good cards. We're playing Rakdos Aggro, so we're playing 4 copies of Play with Fire. Again, helps commit crimes, but also just deals damage. It's really, really good. Funny enough, it's actually the priciest card in the deck at $4 US a piece, which is kind of funny considering it is an uncommon. Then we're also playing 4 copies of Molten Collapse. It's just a really good removal spell for the most part. The Descend is really not hard for the most part to be able to trigger in this deck as well. So just a huge fan of Molten Collapse in general. I think this card is definitely very, very strong. So let's go ahead and talk about the lands real quick, which we are a budget deck, so it's going to be really, really easy for our dual lands. So we're playing 4 Restless Fence, 4 Jagged Barrens, and 4 Bloodfell Caves as our main dual lands. Restless Fence obviously is really good because it's a man land. I really like the Jagged Barrens as well, being able to deal 1 damage, and again, which counts as committing a crime. So, but it's also, we're aggro, getting in a little bit of extra damage. You never know the hell that's going to add up. So huge fan of that. Bloodfell Caves is mostly because we're a budget deck and we need another dual land, so that's why we're playing the Bloodfell Caves. And then rounding out our lands, we're playing 4 mountains and 5 swamps. And as our spicy basic land of the day, we're playing primarily a deck with Outlaws of Thunder Junction cards, so we had to feature the Outlaws of Thunder Junction basics. I know I featured the mountain here on the channel, but I haven't featured the swamp, and I think the swamp is sweet. I really, really like this artwork. So don't go anywhere yet though. We still have to talk about the sideboard as well as some upgrade options for the deck, which sideboarding is really simple. As funny as it sounds, we're going to want a little bit of graveyard hate just because of the World Souls Rage deck that's going around. Part of their combos, all their cards go into the graveyard and then they bring them back and yada, yada, yada. So we're going to want some graveyard hate. So make sure you are packing some. We're going to want some extra removal. Really, you could play any extra removal you want. I mean, if there's a lot of artifacts in your local metagame, play some Abrades. You could play some Bitter Triumphs. You could play some Cutdowns. It's really up to you. We're Rakdos. We have pretty much a smorgasbord of options for removal in our sideboard. Duress. You're going to want 4 Duress. Just this metagame, with how everything is, just play 4 Duress. Believe me, it is the right thing to do. And the last thing to mention is End the Festivities. Boros Convoke is kind of everywhere right now, so make sure you're packing 3 to maybe even 4 copies of End the Festivities. If you're looking for the slight budget option, because I know the End the Festivities are like $1.50 US a piece, you could also play Tectonic Hazard. It's almost the same thing, except it doesn't hit Planeswalkers, but again, that doesn't happen very often. But again, if you're looking for a budget option, I highly suggest playing that. And the last thing we have to talk about is the upgrade options, which I'm going to be honest with you is really simple. Most of the cards that we're currently playing in the deck, we're still playing, in the non-budget deck. So, the non-budget deck. So upgrade the dual lands, obviously, get some Blackleaves Cliffs, some Haunted Ridges. You could even play some Plaza of Heroes just because we're playing a lot of different legendary creatures. Tiny Bones. Tiny Bones is really, really good in this deck. They're a little bit pricey for our budget deck. I want to say last time I checked, they're going for about 15, 16 US a piece. So if you have some laying around, definitely play them, but they're not 100% necessary. But I'm telling you, they are really, really good in this style of deck. And the last thing I want to mention is the budget list is only $45, which is extremely cheap for a strong standard deck. And even then, the upgraded list is only $184, which is really cheap. Most of the costs for the upgraded list is just in the dual lands as well as the Tiny Bones. Everything else in this deck is extremely cheap. You can get everything for like 25 cents, 50 cents, $1. This deck is really, really strong for the budget that it's at. Because again, all of it's from Outlaws of Thunder Junction. People really like the set. People are opening it. And not a lot of these cards are seeing a ton of play for the most part in Standard or even Pioneer, which definitely doesn't mean that they're bad. I think it's just that they're really underexplored. And with how the Standard metagame is, I just don't think it really aligns for a deck like this to compete, at like a competitive, like if you're going to like an RCQ or anything like that. But if you're looking for a fun standard deck to play with friends or at your local game store, again, you just want to, play a cheap deck but do really well, I think that this is the perfect deck for you. I really like this. I always love being able to build decks with all the new mechanics in the set, so huge fan of this deck. So that takes us to the end of the video here. Thanks so much for watching. Huge shout out to our channel members, Ralph, Matt, Arcadius, and Ray. If you are interested in being a channel member, it's only $1 a month. You get access to the exclusive Discord, as well as other features here on the channel. And let me know in the description below, or not the description, the comment section below, what do you think about the decks? Is there something that I forgot to include in both of these decks? And if you want to check out the budget and non-budget list, the deck lists are in the description below. You can check them out there. So I'm Commander Crane. Thanks for watching this video, and I'll catch you in the next one.